Welcome to episode 25. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for being on the show. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so first question that we like to ask our guests is, what are you loving right now?
So I'm loving a few things. One of those is the Beauty Counter Color Intense lipstick in Garden Party. I am obsessed with it and wearing it every day. I also am a sucker for chocolate. Anything eating evolved has stolen my heart.
And I know I mentioned before we started recording that I feel like that Garden Party lipstick was just made for you because it looks so good on you.
I just love that it's like a little pop of color in summertime.
Yeah, I
And
think
it's buildable too.
Oh, say that again.
It's buildable too. So it's like either a little bit sheer or you can do it more dramatic.
Yeah, I feel like Christy Coleman had you in mind when she did that color.
I see that with like the complexion and the hair color. Like it's perfect.
Exactly. And then what specifically from Eating Evolved do you like, or is it all the things?
All the things, but I actually had one of the coconut butter cups right before jumping on here, just for a little pre-podcast fuel. It was so good.
Yeah. I had like 17 cups of coffee. So
there we go.
Maybe only 4, but
Their cups, those dark chocolate cups are delicious.
Yeah.
To die for. So like their yeah, and their coconut butter, if you've ever tried that, put that on top of their cups, or even just like their dark chocolate is like out of this world.
Yeah. Or I like to do like a little bit of almond butter with either their regular chocolate or on the cup, and it's so good.
Exactly. It is a kick in the pants delicious.
Yeah.
That's like a whole new level.
Yeah.
I one time posted an Instagram pic of Eating Evolve because when I went to PaleoFX, I got some of their chocolate and their coconut butter. That picture has like 500 and something likes on it. I was just like, whoa.
Most liked photo on Instagram.
Oh, it definitely is. I was like, wow, okay. Chocolate and almond butter. What do you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It gets everyone.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, now none of us can stop thinking about chocolate. And I'm sure listeners, guys, you're welcome. Especially after the sugar detox episode last week. All right, so today we are going to talk all about fertility tips and tricks with Elizabeth. So, Elizabeth, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and you had an awesome Instagram and Facebook post about this the other day, but why fertility?
So this is, for some reason, a very popular question. I chose fertility as my niche, and I had it in mind all throughout my education. It's a area of specialty and passion for me because my sister has gone through fertility struggles and miscarriage. So I've been alongside the journey with her, and all throughout that journey, I saw that there was a void in the healthcare system and that there was area and room for a natural approach. So I've developed my own system for dealing with women and men who are struggling with fertility. And I just couldn't imagine doing anything else.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's so true. Working in the doctor's office that I work in, we deal with it every single day. And it's just so scary to see how common it is. Yeah. And also, too, how common like miscarriage and just it's infertility is just all kinds of, varying issues. It's a really big problem nowadays.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know I was talking to you a little bit about the show, even like a nutritional therapy practitioner and functional medicine practitioner like myself, I am not so great. Like I'm very touchy-feely with like the pre and post pregnancy. So I think that it's really cool that you've made it your niche and dove into it. And I would like love to hear more about kind of your approach to it too.
Yeah.
All right.
So what are some of your top tips for couples trying to conceive?
So one of my top tips is actually just saying no. I deal with women who are, not to say pushovers, but they like to please everyone, and and all of us have so much on the go right now, between work and home life and going out with friends and girls' weekends and self-care and yoga and everything. We have so much going on that you need to give yourself permission to say no without feeling guilty to things that don't fill your cup. And what I mean by that is if something isn't lighting you on fire, you're allowed to say no to that. By saying yes to everyone, we're actually becoming more stressed. And when we're stressed out, we release our stress hormone called cortisol. And cortisol throws off our sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, which means that we're going to have more difficulty getting pregnant. So something as simple as saying no to things that you don't really want to do is totally fine and will actually help boost your fertility.
So that was really funny when you said just say no.
Yeah.
In my head, I was thinking,
where are we going with this?
That's hilarious. I had that thought too. I was like, I don't know if making a baby works that way, but no, but I love what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I am all about that because I think as women, we are such people pleasers, like you said, and it's just like we burn ourselves out trying to do everything for everyone else and then ourselves at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot.
Yeah. My other recommendation is to try choosing organic foods whenever possible. So the Environmental Working Group every year puts out their Dirty Dozen and Clean 15, which is a list of vegetables and fruits that are pesticide laden is the Dirty Dozen, so the most pesticide laden foods, and then the Clean 15, which are safe foods that have lower pesticide residues on them. So if you're on a budget, that's a really great way to find organic foods. Pesticides have been shown to increase infertility risk. Some pesticides cross the placenta barrier. So if they're already in our bloodstream and then we get pregnant, those pesticides can actually enter into the fetus's bloodstream. Mm-hmm. We also see neurotoxins when we're talking about pesticides. So that means they're toxic to the brain. So again, when we're talking about getting pregnant, we're talking about growing another human in your body. And that means that we need a safe environment. And if we're eating foods that potentially have the risk to damage the brain, we need to avoid those foods. So that just means choosing organic, safer options.
So this is just a total hypothetical thing that I thought of with the Environmental Working Group and the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. Yeah. What about all the other fruits and vegetables that are not included in that list of 27?
So generally they're in between the dirty and the clean. That's why if you're like on a budget or very strict on or very tight on money, that's when I would recommend the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it just makes sense to buy as much organic as you can possibly afford. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's good to know. Yeah, I've always wondered about that. I'm like, everybody else is just left out.
They just land in between.
I think that the way that they spray too, and like the amounts and everything. Also, like if you think of a strawberry, like when it's growing and it's spraying, I mean, those pesticides are just incorporating into that piece of fruit versus something with like a skin. You at least have some sort of protection, right?
Yeah, you have a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of foods would you recommend for couples trying to conceive outside of them being organic?
Yeah, so fats. It blows my mind that in 2018, people are still scared of fat. I don't understand it. I will never understand it. We've done so much research and there are so many studies out there that have shown fat is good for you and we need fat to be healthy. Of course, we need healthy fats rather than trans fats and unhealthy fats. But we need fats as both women and men. Healthy fats are the building bones or the building blocks for hormones, for our sex hormones. So if we're not consuming enough avocado or coconut oil or any of those healthy fats, we're actually depleting our body of hormones and we're not making enough hormones to actually get pregnant. And then we see a drop in ovulation. We see a drop in menstrual cycle regularity. So healthy fats are your best friend when you're trying to conceive. So those come from foods like salmon, avocado, coconut, nuts and seeds. Eggs are a really incredible source of not only fat, but also a nutrient called choline. Mm-hmm. Choline is essential for preventing neural tube defects in your baby's development. So it's a really important nutrient that's often overlooked for folate or folic acid. So eggs are a really incredible food for fertility as they provide so much nutrients in them.
The whole egg, right?
The whole egg. Nature designed it as the whole egg. Why are we messing with that?
So true.
Because you can get it in a box the other way. No,
ew.
I know, right?
No.
That is the stuff you want to stay far away from. I know my philosophy when I'm talking to people about nutrition and they're like, I just don't know what to eat. I'm like, well, if it's an animal that roamed the earth or like some sort of animal that has an egg and we can eat that, right? Like eat those, right? Happy ones that are like out in a pasture eating grass in the vitamin, in the sun getting vitamin D. And if it's some sort of plant that grew out of the earth, eat that too. And if it's anything other than that, just stay away from it.
If it comes in a package, don't buy it.
Okay, so on this note, another tangent. Did you guys see the thing about Kerrygold butter today?
No.
Okay, I'm going to look while you're answering the next question, but there's some lawsuit that the claims about the butter, like the cows actually being grass-fed, is not true.
Oh man,
no.
that would ruin that company.
Yeah. So I'm going to look at that when you're answering the next question.
I have a question. Are there any foods that you should avoid if you're trying to get pregnant or if you are pregnant or while you're pregnant?
Yeah. So just like we were talking about, if it's a whole food that's coming from the earth, then you're pretty much safe. Obviously, with a few exceptions, I 100% avoid things like canola oil, vegetable oil, those types of oils, because oftentimes when we buy them, they're already rancid fats, and rancid fats turn into oxidative damage in our body. And our body has to work harder to get rid of that toxin. So we want to be limiting any toxin that our body has to somehow eliminate. Either when you're pregnant, before you're pregnant, pretty much any time during your life, you want to avoid toxins that you can avoid, because there are so many toxins that we can't avoid, that our body does have to process, that we want to take out some of that hard work. But pretty much whole foods are good foods when you're trying to conceive, when you're pregnant, postnatally. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was just curious because I had read somewhere that like herbs, like parsley and cilantro, could sometimes induce miscarriage, but I think it's if you eat it probably in like really, really large quantities.
Yeah, cilantro is a really great liver detoxifier. So when we're having like a whole cilantro juice with nothing else or with not very many other ingredients, then there can be an issue. But again, herbs are hit and miss. You have to be careful with herbs and talk to someone who's like very qualified and knows what they're talking about, because they can be controversial. And if you're using them for the wrong thing, if you're using too much of specific herbs, that can be dangerous.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that about herbs.
Yeah. I had read it somewhere, so I figured I would ask the professional.
I've never heard that about parsley, but cilantro, it is a very strong liver detoxifier if it's consumed in large amounts.
Aren't they in the same family, cilantro and parsley? They're like cousins.
I'm sure they look the same.
Yeah.
There was a family tree.
They just have different hairdos.
Yeah. One is blonde, one is brunette.
Well, one's like a little more leafy. The other one could be like curly and.
Oh my goodness. Sorry, I keep digressing this. So since we're talking a little bit about herbs and everything, going into supplements, what are some of the supplements that you suggest people use to boost their fertility?
So as much as nutritionists seem to love supplements, I try and keep it to just a few because I find, for me anyways, supplements can be super overwhelming, and swallowing a handful of pills isn't the most fun thing to do. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I always recommend a multivitamin. So if you're female, I recommend a really good quality prenatal multivitamin. I really like the brand. I don't know if they're available in the States. I'm in Canada, so Mega Foods and Garden of Life. Otherwise, I like a Food State multivitamin for both men and women, as it's just more absorbable for the body. It's a really great insurance policy when you're taking a multivitamin in case you aren't eating the most balanced diet. If you have a slip up now and then, you're ensured that you are getting the nutrients that your body needs. So a really good quality multivitamin is a must for both men and women. And ensuring that your multivitamin has zinc in it. Most of them do, but zinc is the second most abundant element in human tissue. And it's needed for so many functions of the body, especially in men. And every time men ejaculate, they lose zinc. So we have to ensure that we're keeping up our zinc supplies for a healthy immune system, healthy sperm quality, all of that good stuff. And then essential fatty acids. So an omega-3 supplement that has a higher amount of DHA to EPA, so that we're getting enough of those healthy fats for both our body, for our hormones, and then hopefully for a baby.
I never knew that about zinc. About when men ejaculate, they lose zinc. I had no idea.
Hopefully that's okay to say on a podcast.
Oh, of course. This is an educational show here. I'm sure a lot of people out there were like, whoa, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I want to know how many people, like the next time that their man does that, they're going to be like, hey, guess what?
I just stole your zinc.
It's a weird fact, eh?
I love it.
Oh my gosh. Well, speaking of that, what is the best day or time of the month for couples to have sex for maximum results? Those baby making results.
Yeah. So this is actually hilarious, or I don't know if it's hilarious or we're not educated enough, but 67% of couples aren't having sex on the right day for optimum conception chances, which blows my mind because you can be doing everything else right. You can be eating the best foods for your body, taking all the supplements, making all the lifestyle shifts. But if you're not having sex on the right days, how are you going to get pregnant? Mm-hmm. So the best days, after that little tangent, the best days to have sex for maximum results, or opposite, if you don't want to get pregnant, avoid these days, are 48 hours before your prime ovulation day. So that means you do have to be tracking your cycle. You can use an app to track your cervical mucus to figure out when your prime ovulation day is. And then you want to subtract 48 hours from that day in the upcoming month. And that's the day, the 48-hour mark and the 24-hour mark, as well as your prime day of ovulation. You should be having sex during that 48-hour window for prime results.
Now, do you have your clients like take their body temperature? I've heard of that as well.
Yeah. So I definitely recommend doing your basal body temperature, which just means you're taking your temperature with a regular old thermometer before you get up in the morning. So every day should be about the same time, give or take about 30 minutes. And you need to be taking your temperature before even checking your phone in the morning, before getting out of bed. As soon as your alarm goes off, you reach for your thermometer and you take your temperature, and you can track it that way. your prime ovulation day, so that peak, not the peak window, but the peak day will be when your body reaches its lowest temperature. So how that works is your body will slowly, it's not by very much, it's usually like 0.2 degrees, but your body will slowly dip in temperature until it reaches that bare minimum temperature, and that's your prime ovulation day. And then it'll increase again. And then if your temperature stays steady for the next 2 weeks, that's generally a sign that you may be pregnant. If your temperature starts dipping again, then that's a sign you're probably not pregnant. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, neither.
It's crazy that it just varies by so little.
Mm-hmm.
So little. You can go from like less than a degree even throughout your whole cycle, but it's those incremental tiny shifts that play a big part.
That's really cool.
Yeah, you can also use basal body temperature to figure out how your thyroid is operating and functioning. If your temperature is always really low, that can mean that your thyroid is underperforming, and then you can use that to go to your doctor with, get tested.
Yeah, who knew body temperature?
Fun fact.
So much besides, you have a fever.
Yeah.
Or you have hypothermia, one of the two.
Hypothyroid, Casey. Yeah, that's interesting. And then so the other way that you can tell with your peak day is just through cervical mucus?
Yeah. If you just, when you wipe after going to the washroom, your cervical mucus on your prime ovulation day it should be like an egg white consistency, very elasticized. So you should be able to stretch it a bit if you're really going for it. And that's your prime ovulation day.
We have talked all about cervical mucus with Kim Broussard. We've had her on the show twice now. So she's a Creighton model practitioner.
Amazing.
Yeah. So we are all familiar.
You're all about that cervical mucus.
Casey and I are cervical mucus professionals.
Pros. Yeah.
We have stickers and everything.
Yeah, we do. That's just hilarious.
Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. So now earlier I was kind of talking about like how infertility is on the rise, like scary rise. Yeah. And so I know infertility now affects like 1 in 6, couples. This number has risen over the past 20 years. Do you think that it will continue rise? And why do you think that fertility is so common?
I think, unfortunately, unless we do something about the state of our planet, it will continue to rise. I know all three of us, we do beauty counter as well. And given the prevalence of toxic ingredients that are going onto our skin and into our bodies on a daily basis, from car emissions, from beauty products, from like pretty much everywhere, I think unless that stops, then infertility will continue to rise, because it's just the way things are. Like there's no one stopping car usage or gasoline or emissions or pesticides on food. Like all of these things contribute to our toxic load. And as long as that's increasing or at least staying the same, then I don't see infertility rates decreasing at all, unfortunately, which is really scary.
Something that you touched on a little bit earlier when you were talking about both men and women being on a multivitamin. And so you were looking at both couples. So I feel like, just hearing my friends talk about struggles with infertility and everything, like it's always the woman's issue. Yeah. And so how do you go about, I guess, kind of bringing the man into it? Is it just from like day one, or like how do you get the guys involved too? Yeah,
so believe it or not, because I know that the majority of when you go to the doctor, it's generally focused on the female, but 30 to 40% of infertility cases are caused by the male.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I believe it.
So it's really important that from day one, before you encounter any issues, you're starting with a good foundation. So that includes a multivitamin, like that's the bare minimum that you should be doing. It includes decreasing your beer intake. Beer actually depletes zinc, which we were just talking about. So if you're consuming beer, it's decreasing your vitamin and your nutrient portfolio of your body. So it's really important to make strategic lifestyle shifts, both female and male, because infertility is on the rise. Infertility does come from both men and women, and we need to be acting together because it takes two to make a baby. And if we're focusing solely on the female, then we're missing half of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was listening to a podcast that Tom O'Brien was on the other day, and he was talking about how in the last 50 years, male sperm count has decreased by like up to 40% or something insane. And
quality.
Yeah. And he was basically saying the same thing. He was like, if we don't change our toxic environment, like eating out of plastic and all of these things that we do to induce chemicals and toxic load on our body every single day, he's like, if we don't do anything, like our race is going to fail because we literally cannot repopulate.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy listening to him talk about that. And there was like the study done on the sperm count and all that kind of stuff. And then he was talking about, I think like in Rome, like the Roman culture, like they failed because they built like those lead aqua tanks. And so like everybody got lead poisoning, and that's like how that culture just vanished. He was like, that's what's going to happen to us because we're using all this toxic crap in our every single day lives. And it was just like, whoa.
And it's everything. It's your containers. It's your like everything.
Yeah.
So it's like simple shifts like changing to glass or changing to a stainless steel water bottle or getting a glass like takeaway cup that you can take to the coffee shop rather than having a paper or plastic cup. Like all of these small changes, which feel like you're not actually changing anything, have a humongous impact. And I think that that's what people forget is we get so overwhelmed by like we have to change everything, but even just changing one thing, like buying glass reusable containers rather than plastic, that will impact your health in such a profound positive way. And it's such an easy change to make.
I love that you just said that because it's so true, because I've actually had people when I'm talking to them about like switching their skincare over to Beauty Counter, they're like, okay, but what's the point? Is it really going to make that big of a difference? I'm like, it's going to make a huge difference over a year's time. Think about for example, using a Beauty Counter lipstick without all the toxic, harmful chemicals versus, MAC or anything else that might potentially have lead in it, right? Over a year, think about that toxic buildup, like just in 1 year. And then times that by your whole life with like everything that you could potentially switch out, the cups and the plasticware and the skincare and the cleaners, and it's like at the end of the day it makes a huge giant drop of the bucket, right? So I love that you said that.
I think it's tricky too because we live in this culture and society where everything we do, we want to see the change, we want it to be instant, and unfortunately when it's in our body, unless it escalates to the point where you're suffering from an autoimmune disease or something like that, we don't necessarily see the shift like externally of using safer products. But we just have to trust that our body is performing better and that our liver is doing less work. And by all of those little things, we will feel better. But it isn't an overnight fix, and B, you might not see the changes even though you're working really hard at it.
But I guarantee your life will look completely different when you're 60, 70, 80, and 90 years old.
Yeah, but people don't like to wait. People want it now.
I know.
So true.
But you're so right.
You posted something that was great. It was at the end of June, and it was about plastic-free July.
Yeah.
And so I accidentally, I just wasn't even thinking, forgot to bring in my reusable cup, and I did have a cup of coffee out of a plastic. It was like an iced latte out of a plastic cup, but that was my first plastic cup this month.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it's just been, I mean, it's been so much easier. Just, okay, I have my cup. Here you go. This is, but just being cognizant of it, you do not realize how much plastic you use in day to day. And you try to do a plastic-free July and you're like, holy crap, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even something like that, even if you forget your reusable cup and you're using a plastic cup, if you're not taking a lid and a straw and you're just drinking it like a regular glass of coffee or whatever, you're already eliminating your footprint just by refusing those two elements, and you're still enjoying your coffee as well. So I think there's give and take. There's ways you can make it easier and harder and more complicated, and it's really up to you how complicated you want it to be. And small changes become habits, and habits are really easy to continue. But just it's so easy to get overwhelmed. And I hope that it's coming across that all of these small, tiny changes don't have to be overwhelming and don't have to all happen at the same time to make a really big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like what Jennifer said last week, just creating new normals.
Yeah.
That, I mean, we all have our reusable water bottles. And it's, I mean, I would never think to buy a bottle of water anymore. It's just like, oh, just fill mine up.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a new normal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I take my glass water bottle with me everywhere, on the airplane, like everything. I just travel with it. And even if I'm flying and going somewhere else, like I've got my glass water bottle when I get there and I just keep filling it up.
Mm-hmm. And it is becoming the new normal, at least around where we live, because it's weird to see people with plastic water bottles. You're like, wow, you have to throw that Nestle or whatever water bottle in the garbage at like when you're finished drinking it. And it's weird, and people are actually noticing that, and I think that's a really big improvement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Yep. Little changes over time. That's all it takes.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Remember that experiment we would do in elementary school where you put the drops of water on a penny and you finally get to that one drop that just makes it overflow? You can kind of think of all of these as just little droplets. So, okay, it's a lipstick that we're using, like, you wouldn't think that that's a big deal, or the mascara, or just using a water bottle. But all of these little things start to add up until you get to that one drop, and then you're 70 and your life sucks. You're like, wow.
Or not even 70, you're 40 and you've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroid disorder or cancer or any of these things. It just takes that one diagnosis for everything in your world to crumble, and you can actually avoid that with like small little changes, and that can change your whole life.
Mm-hmm. I know another question I wanted to ask you about men's fertility: cell phones in their pockets.
Good, bad? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, good or bad? Heck no. Should they all be
really recommend avoiding cell phones, both for men and for women, in your front pocket or in your back pocket, because of the radiation that cell phones cause. That can actually impair sperm quality, sperm quantity, as well as egg quality. So it's both important for men and women. So I would recommend leaving your phone. It also goes for like laptops. Rather than having it on your lap, have it on a table, so that you're not being directly exposed to that sort of radiation. There was actually a study done in Germany a couple of years ago that found that just by having your phone in your back pocket, they could see little tumors forming. They were benign, but they could still see these masses forming exactly where your cell phone was. They could see the shape of your cell phone. They could see everything just from these benign tumors. So I think that shows you how much of an impact just carrying your cell phone in your pocket actually has.
Wow.
Yeah. There was another study that I saw that they used, I don't know, some sort of light, but they basically looked at someone's skull, like their head and their brain when you have a cell phone up to your ear, like talking on the phone. And the frequency from the phone goes about 2 to 2.5 inches into our skull, into our brain. So like that electronic magnetic frequency, like that, it's pretty intense. So that's why it's really important. They say to like talk with like earbuds or on speakerphone. Like you don't actually want to hold the phone directly up to your head because it's causing a lot of neurological issues. Same thing with it in your pocket. And there's definitely companies out there that you can research to get like EMF protector cases. So I know Defender Shield is a good company. You can get like cases on your phone, and then you can also get pads where you, like if you have your computer on your lap, or even I guess on your desk, you could just set it on top of that Defender pad. To be careful of that stuff. I think that there is something real serious going on with our EMF exposure and the cell phone towers and the 5G and everything that they're rolling out. I mean, we're going to see some bad health implications from this stuff. I mean, we already are, but I think it's only going to get worse. So if you could not put that stuff on your body, that would be just put it away. Or get one of those cases or something.
For sure.
It's intense.
Right, so takeaway message, do not keep your phone in your pocket while you're drinking a beer.
Exactly.
If you want to make a baby.
You nailed it.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Now, what are some other areas that couples need to tackle in order to optimize their fertility?
So I like to focus, as we were already talking about, on lifestyle shifts. So decreasing toxic exposure. That also means swapping out your menstrual products. So for example, conventional tampons contain things like bleach and chlorine and unorganic cotton, which is laden with pesticides. So that sort of product can be easily swapped out for either an organic tampon or a Diva Cup or a reusable menstrual cup, and that will decrease your exposure to toxins like tenfold because that area of your body is so sensitive and absorbs everything. So that's one area. And other lifestyle shifts like swapping out your Windex for a cleaner alternative and those types of things. I also really focus on mindset. So a lot of the times with women I work with, they're sabotaging themselves by changing the wording of what they're saying. So saying, if I get pregnant rather than when I get pregnant, not believing 100% that it will happen to them. And again, it goes back to the saying yes to everyone and saying no to themselves, and just changing that ideology and that mindset around to believing that you're worth it and you can have a baby. And all of those small mindset shifts may seem insignificant and silly, but they actually play a huge part in your fertility journey.
Yeah, that's so true. I think mindset has a lot to do with everything with our health. So especially with fertility. And I love like that visualization of like when I get pregnant, and also like seeing yourself pregnant and seeing yourself with a baby. Like I think that kind of stuff is really important because our thoughts basically start to lay down like the railroad tracks for our life. And so when we start visualizing, you know, whether it's having a baby or having $1 million in the bank or whatever it might be, there is something very, you know, chemically going on in our brain where it's actually starting to create those stepping stones to get to that end result. So mindset is a huge piece of the puzzle that I think you're right. A lot of people don't tend to think about, and they don't think about it as you know, much as they should.
Yeah.
Now, when you were talking about tampons and everything, is there a specific, what's it called, like Diva Cup or menstrual cup that you recommend? Like, are there any out there that are bad, or if they're making that, then they're pretty solid?
So menstrual cups, really the only difference between the different brands is the size of them. Some people find that Diva Cups don't work for them because of the shape of the Diva Cup, or it's too big or too small for them. It doesn't fit properly. So they changed to the Lunette cup, and that works better. So those are probably the biggest differences. Generally, they're all a good option.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I use the Lena cup and I love it.
Oh, good.
Yes.
I use the Diva Cup and I love it.
I've never tried a cup. So
I've never tried the Diva Cup. I've only ever tried the Lena.
Yeah.
How often should you switch those things out, like get new ones?
So I recommend having 2 that you switch and you sanitize every day, that you can switch between during your cycle. And then usually after about 3 to 4 years, or if you see any sign of wear and tear, then I would replace it.
Wow, I had no idea they lasted that long.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like I just need to order one more and I'm good to go. Cool.
Mm.
Do they sell them in a pack of 2? They need to. Maybe
They might actually.
We should write them and tell them that.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Invent your own interpretation and then sell it in a pack of 2.
Yeah.
The Project Nourish cup.
There you go, Megan.
I've been trying to think of a product.
I'm still not down to ship it.
That was the only string I had left to pull with her, is figuring out shipping.
Sell it on Amazon or something.
Exactly.
And then you don't have to worry about shipping.
Yeah.
Yep.
There you go.
That's
We
hilarious.
just found out how we're going to get that $1 million in our bank
Yeah.
account.
This podcast took a really interesting turn.
I know, right?
It always
Turned
does.
into a startup podcast.
It always
It always
does.
does.
That's why we love it. All right. Well, cool, guys. Well, this has been super informative.
Yes, Elizabeth, super, super informative. Where can people find you?
So I am on Facebook, on Instagram at Fuel Goodness. And you can also find me at fuelgoodness.com, and you can see everything I'm up to there. I have tons of blog posts all about fertility and all that fun stuff.
Very cool. And that's where people, if they want to reach out to you and work with you, they would just go to your website and
Yeah, and I have some very exciting things launching in August. So I don't know when this will air, but stay tuned, and there's some really great stuff happening soon.
Very cool.
Very exciting. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming onto the show and sharing all of your nuggets and knowledge with us.
Thanks so much for having me. It was so much fun.
All right. Thank you.